Alicia.
I'm Lacey.
And we love Wild Child Magazine.
Hey, Wild Child Magazine. This is Wild Child, and I'd like to introduce you guys to a brand new member of Wild Child Magazine. This is Mallory, and she's going to be one of our brand new interviewers here. Everybody say hi. Mallory, say hi to all your fans out there, or your new fans.
What up?
Yee! So you guys will be seeing her a lot on the scene. We hope to be able to bring you guys a whole lot of amazing bands with this little vixen in it. But tonight, ladies and gentlemen, we are here live at the Hawthorne Theater with one of the most amazing writers of our time. He actually helps make our community, our metal community, exactly what it is. And I'd very much like to introduce you guys to Ruben from Oregon Music Live.
Thanks for having me. I mean, this is cool.
So I'd like everybody to know you write for more than just Oregon Music Live. You actually write for many different entities, and if you don't already know him, he's one of the best, if not the most creative, if not the most brilliant rock writer in our time right now. And we're gonna kind of get a little bit more in depth and find out exactly what he does for our community. So tell everybody what you write for, who you write for.
Yeah, well, Oregon Music News, Rock Confidential, more of a hard rock website called Sleaze Rocks, Metal Titans out of Vancouver, BC, and a couple other ones, but we won't mention them.
So a couple other ones, but we won't mention them. Awesome. So, you know, you've interviewed damn near, you must be like 1,000 bands on the planet, right?
I would probably say the last time I checked, we were clocking in at like 346. So
that's still
it's getting up there in numbers.
I mean, that's a shitload of bands, right?
It's a lot of bands, but I've been fortunate enough to catch up with a couple of people 2, 3, 4 times, so that's pretty cool.
Absolutely. So, in all the bands that you've ever written about or that you've ever personally interviewed, what was the most influential that you've, who really stood out of all these interviews?
Gosh, there's a number of them. Off the top of my head, I'd probably have to say Richard Patrick from Filter. That was a good interview, simply because I wasn't that huge of a fan of his, but somehow along the way, during the time I was doing research for the interview and stuff like that, I really came up with some pretty good questions, and he answered every single one of them. And it was one of those interviews that originally started out as you got 15 minutes to talk to this guy, and I wound up being on the phone with the guy for probably a little over an hour. And when they rolled into Portland, one of the cool things he says is, you got to get in touch with me. Here's my number. Text me. And sure enough, you know, we were watching them doing sound check at the time, and I texted him, and I could literally see him reach to his iPhone, and he was looking at that and shoved it back in his pocket. And sure enough, I got in touch with him, and he said, come on back. And it was one of those cool moments because he was really appreciative of the press that he got, and it was really just a great interview. But there's been a ton of them, yeah.
So, in all the interviews that you've done, what keeps your writing fresh? Like, how do you keep coming up with, like, ways to describe things instead of, oh my God, they totally kicked ass? I mean, how do you keep coming up with some of the most brilliant writing I've personally ever read?
Well, you know, I think, honestly, I mean, you just have to have a thesaurus available because, I mean, you have to come up with new words rather than great, fantastic, phenomenal. You know, I mean, you can only use that so many times, so you really have to dig deep. And if you really mean it, you'll come up with it.
So how did you get started in this industry? What brought you to writing about some of the most amazing artists of our time?
You know, part of it was the fact that probably around 12, 13 years ago, I think I was on some message board and somebody was doing a review of an album, and they said, well, that sucks. And I was like, sucks? I said, that doesn't tell me anything. And they're like, well, you think you can do better? Go ahead and write a review. And I go, well, you know what? I think I can do that, and it's going to be a lot better than sucks. So sure enough, you know, I wrote something, and, you know, a person from the UK got a hold of that, and they're like, hey, you want to write for us? And I said, yeah, sure, why not? I'll give it a go. I mean, I didn't think I'd be great at it, but sure, I'd surely be better than somebody that just says, this sucks, or this is great. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. So, in all the music that you travel a long way, am I correct, to see most of these bands?
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm not based out of Portland, that's for sure. I mean, I travel from Hood River to come see bands. You know, I've seen bands in Seattle, Southern California, and stuff like that. So, I mean, I have to make it count. So it's not about quantity; it's more about quality. So, you know, obviously if it's a new band that I've heard and have gotten some snippets and got a chance to hear some of the sound bites off their albums and stuff, and it's something that grabs me, I certainly want to come out and see them.
So if somebody wanted to contact you and say, hey, I would really like you to check these band out, like they're incredible, blah, 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 how would somebody go about contacting you?
Well, I think I think for starters, I mean, if it's a local act, obviously it'd be good. And by local, I guess I mean like somebody based out of Oregon, Washington State. You know, they can contact Oregon Music News. And, you know, you just go on to OregonMusicNews.com and there's a contact link on there. And you just fire out an email and we'll get on it.
So what is your personal favorite genre of music that you like writing about, and two, you will travel long distances to actually go and see?
Without a doubt. I mean, I think more of thrashy, traditional, hard rock, metal, that kind of stuff is my thing. I mean, I actually like other stuff. Like I do listen to some blues stuff. I do listen to some alternative country stuff. But yeah, I think when it comes down to it, the number one thing that I will definitely travel out of my area to go see is going to be metal stuff. So.
You guys heard that right here on Wild Child Magazine. This guy travels to write about you. So if you guys have something absolutely amazing, please contact Ruben and get on there. So what is the funniest interview? Was there any time that something just happened during an interview that was absolutely hysterical, or an interview that kind of stood out that was comical, that, you know, made you laugh and you're still laughing about now?
I think we got Chewbacca over here going. No, actually, you know, the funniest interview is probably also the worst interview. The worst interview was with Chris Barnes. The first time I talked to him from 6 Feet Under, 6 Feet Under rather, and I'm not kidding you. I mean, it was high. You know, he was high, and you know, I was asking open-ended questions. He would just give me one answer responses, and it was like, what do I do with this? You know, and then eventually, you know, I got a hold of the publicist and I said, you know, what do you want me to do with this? I mean, this guy, I mean, you know what he was doing. And he says, yeah, well, just see what you can do with it. And, you know, I think it was a cool story in the sense that I got this package from Metal Blade with like a Chris Barnes bobblehead and like a couple 6 Feet Under shirts. I mean, again, I won't hold it against him because I'm a huge fan. Eventually, I did wind up doing another follow-up interview, and that was fantastic. So, you know, I mean, that was also kind of the funniest, but not so funny at the same time, because I'm sitting there going, I got some great questions, and this guy's just giving me a one-word response, you know. But, you know, what are you going to do?
That could be difficult. That could be difficult to deal with.
Okay, so of all of the bands that are out there, anybody that you could absolutely pick, who do you want to interview? Like, who really grabs your balls and you just really want to interview them bad, but maybe may not be able to?
Like national acts? Is that what you're saying? Like
any band?
Well, I'd love to take a crack at somebody in Iron Maiden. I've met Lemmy before a couple of times, but I've never actually done an interview. I'd love to do an interview with Lemmy at some point. You know, I think that would be killer. Maybe Rob Halford. You know, I mean, just bands like that. I mean, just some pretty cool classic metal artists. I think more so than newer artists. Yeah.
So being that, and I have just a few more questions for you, but being that you write for so many different entities, Sleaze Rocks is definitely a lot different than the Oregon Music News. How do you differentiate between the many different entities that you write for and keep it specific to that website? Right.
I mean, I think it all goes based on kind of what the artists are. I mean, if it's more of a local thing, then obviously it'll go on Oregon Music News. If it's a national act that's coming through Portland, here in the near future, we'll do an interview, get them on there. And if it's like a hard rock band, you know, they'll probably go on Rock Confidential. If it's a metal band that isn't playing anywhere near the Northwest, it'll go on probably Metal Titans. And then if it's something more along the lines of like Cinderella or something, Tom Kiefer's got a new album coming out in April, and I'm going to do an interview. great band, actually. I saw them in December 8th of 1986, opening up for David Lee Roth, and they played just about everything off Night Song, so it's a great album. But in any event, Tom Kiefer is going to be doing a solo album. It's more geared towards hard rock. No Portland dates lined up, so that'll probably go on the Sleaze Rock site. So I just kind of mentally have these kind of categories where I can just say, okay, this one would fit here, this one would fit there. And in some cases, you know, I do a variation where you can do like an album review, and that'll go on all 4 or 5 sites, you know, so.
So, exactly how many hours in a week do you think that you actually are spending in this career of yours?
Well, it's more of a hobby, actually, because, I mean, I think if I had this, if I was getting paid for this, I'd probably be more productive.
So you're saying that you're not getting paid for any of this?
No. I mean, it's pretty much because you love what you do. I mean, you love the music, and you love, you know, kind of pitching whatever you have to say about these bands, these artists, these albums to people, more than anything.
I'd also like to talk about your photographer. You have one of the most incredible, most brilliant as well photographers that works with you, and you know, you guys aren't always side by side, but I'd very much like, you know, people to know who is doing the photography for you, because he's fucking phenomenal.
You know, it's funny because it's John T. Cruz, but anyways, the funny thing about this guy is that I'd been seeing this guy at gigs for like years, and it wasn't until, I think it was like a ministry show. Yeah, I think it was Ministry, and I bumped into him, and I said, you know, I keep seeing you at all these shows. What's the deal you shoot, and who do you shoot for? And he, at that point, he had just hooked up with Oregon Music News, and you know, he'd said, hey, what do you do? And I'm like, I'm just, you know, occasionally I write. And he goes, hey, you know, you ought to write for them. And I was like, well, you know, maybe send me a contact and we'll go from there. And sure enough, I just, you know, submitted something, and they said, yeah, that looks pretty good. And the first show we did was in October of 2010, and it was actually Alice in Chains, Mastodon, and Deftones. So it was a pretty cool show. Yeah, it was a good show. Yeah. So, but, you know, we work more often together than not. I mean, I think probably 90% of what I do usually has some kind of a tie-in with some of his photography and stuff.
So John also owns 1369 Photos. You can look him up on Facebook as well and see some of the most incredible concert shots I've ever seen in my life. I mean, this guy gets in where no other photographer ever does, and always comes out with the shot of all time. So definitely check him out on Facebook. Ruben, we love you at Wild Child Magazine, and we just want to thank you so much for taking the time to come out and talk to us, telling us a little bit more about who you are and what you do, and the guy behind the glasses, as well as the guy behind Oregon Music News. But thank you so much for being with us, and we definitely look forward to seeing what you write again in the future.
Great. Did she just call me Four Eyes? It's pretty cool. Thank you, and I look forward to seeing this online at some point.
Definitely. And from all of us here at Wild Child Magazine, keep your fucking horns high. We'll be seeing you guys again real soon. Night, guys.